Hey guys, Jen here. So this is going to be a little bit different, entering kind of a new phase with experimenting with my own reality, because I feel like that's the only way to get real answers or results one way or another, to either prove or disprove a couple of theories that I have. And I think theory is a good word. We still call the theory of gravity a theory because I think using definitives, especially right now in this sharing of digital information instantly age, we have to be careful and mindful of the words that we use. And that's one of the reasons I started this. Sorry, I had to stop for a second. So if you've been paying attention, you'll notice that I've noticed a lot of similarities in real life that are in our media too. For example, the alleged train wreck that happened an hour from me in East Palestine was a movie on Netflix first. So the question is, are we creating our own reality by the things that we put into the computer? Or is everything that we put into it recycled and none of it's actually happening in our everyday environment around us? Is it just to teach us lessons, push us, pull us, to teach us self-control of our emotions on one hand and bring us closer to a non-corrupted state? Anyways, so I was noticing also in a lot of ARGs that are supposedly fictional stories have a lot in common with my own personal testimony. And again, I have to ask, are the computers just spitting things out to scare people? I've watched enough now. I've observed enough. I think that I see what's going on. It's still not something I'm going to say that is definitive because I don't want to affect anyone else's journey. The goal of all this is to either be a warning to other people, a cautionary tale, or to be a story of how to overcome, which is obviously what I hope for. So I made a couple of lists, and this is how I'm going to start this new journey. I got the camera for a very specific reason as well. I have a theory about that, and I wanted to be able to store information in a different way on a hard copy as well. And I'd really like, if anyone has a link or anything, I'd really like to go back to mini DVD recording, mini DVs, camcorders with the mini cassettes. There's a reason I want to use the magnetic tape. Again, it's something I heard in pop culture, but it rang true. For whatever reason, I had thought that it was God, and I'm not going to say it's not God, giving me clues and hints in the best way that I understand and process information. And I think that's how it works for all of us, the creator, maker, whatever you choose to call it. But I think I've also been leaving information for my own self, and I know that sounds wild, and I know it's going to sound like fiction, but the goal again is to set out to prove these things. So please excuse, I'm in the middle of like redoing a few things. There's a spot Sammy decided tasted good, I guess. But I'm going to show you a list, and if you want to see the whole list, you can pause it. You're going to say, well, why are you sharing this personal information? That type of thing. Again, this is part of examining things and determining what is true and what is not true. Because we found that even with our own history of our country and our nation and our world, that things aren't adding up for the amount of time that allegedly has passed in between events or has not passed. And the last question would be, are we manifesting our own fears? Are people projecting their own fears like oftentimes happens in poltergeists? Are we making these things and giving them life? And as always, I think it's a part of both. I think that there is a tug of war between quote-unquote good and evil, or dark and light, positive and negative, entropy, Ouroboros. But I also think that it's here to help us as well. So let me show you this. And again, this is me poking holes in my own story. I decided to write some things down, and I didn't even get to like age 12. This is just things that stuck out. And I do have a pretty extensive memory. I remember pretty far back. So hold a second. So I'm not going to go over all of these. You guys know I've never seen my original birth certificate. I don't know what hospital I was born. When I was younger, there was a picture of a baby swaddled up. My mom showed it to me, but there was a different name on it. It was Dainine. She said it was a combination of my aunt and my grandma's name, Daisy and Janine. And that when my dad and her got married when I was a year old, he decided to change it. He wanted Genevieve. They settled on Jennifer. The baby pictures I have, I know this sounds weird, but they don't look like me either. Allegedly, they got married when I was a year old. But supposedly we went to California when I was a year old and introduced me to the family out there. And then my dad came there and brought us back to PA. Did any of that happen? I honestly don't know. I've never met my maternal grandparents. My mom's dad's name is Eugene, and her oldest brother is also Eugene. He's a junior. I never met my fraternal grandpa. His name was Raymond, and my dad's oldest brother was also Raymond. He was a junior. My mom flew to Cali from Pittsburgh for a year or so. She left me with her adopted grandma, who was allegedly abusive. Why she would leave me with such a person, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. But I was there for a long period of time without her. This jumps around a bit because things started coming back as I started writing them down. She was different when she came back. A little medical history. I had an appendectomy when I was 3. This does matter for how many times anesthesia was used on me. I guess I died. I got my last rites. I remember the priest. I remember a little Hulk doll my dad brought me from work. I remember my mom begging him to come to the hospital. My mom allegedly grew up in Apollo or Katanning in PA, but she met my dad when she was 17 as she was living in the house behind him and my grandma. But who was she living with? Because that doesn't fit the rest of the story. Her mother left her and her brothers alone and abandoned them and went to California. Her dad found them and he ended up marrying the housekeeper, but then he left, started another family, and my mom and her brothers were left with half-siblings who are my half-aunt and uncles. So it's very convoluted, right? I also have never met the one side of my husband's family. So what is going on here? Medication. I took amoxicillin, the pink medication, every single day like it was my job. I also had multiple allergy shots weekly for a long time, and I would go back to check reactions to those allegedly. Tubes in my ear several times where I was under anesthesia as well. The times I've counted, it was at least 3 to 7 times by the time I was 12. When my mom and me, before we lived with the grandma, I was abused by a babysitter. So we went to live there. I started having nightmares. My aunts and uncles would prank me all the time. They thought it was funny, but of course I was a child, so it wasn't funny to me. That's when ghost stories and that whole thing started entering my life. My mom left my dad because he was abusive when he drank, and I saw him do a few things to her that were very, very bad, but I never saw him be like that the rest of his life, so I'm not sure where any of that came from. At the time, my mom was an aerobics instructor, and I remember her saying goodbye to me there. It's like she left me twice. I don't, and she told me something like that she would be back and don't believe the things that I was told, and it was her and me against the world. And when I was staying with this grandma, I remember following around my aunts and uncles, and they were at this old church. Don't remember what happened there. I just remember it burnt down shortly after that. Then we lived in an apartment down the road, me and my mom, but I was left alone a lot. Me and my friends used to hide in closets. Closets become a big theme for me. I hid in closets all the time. I was left with multiple people. My stepdad entered my life about 7 or 8. He was abusive, possessive. My mom had to call him from the grocery store when we went shopping. His mother taught me how to pray, taught me how to play cards, but she saw children as wicked. They needed to be seen and not heard. When I was with my dad's mom, I hid in the closet, and I had the newspaper of Neil Armstrong, because I remember she said I couldn't touch it anymore. We had to be very careful with that, and something strange happened, but I don't recall exactly what. And it reminds me of 2017 when I was babysitting, and there was a Kennedy magazine sitting out of the car of Kennedy. And I also have a Time Life magazine that I found at the local consignment shop. I took pictures of it. If it changes, I'll let you guys know. I never told anyone this, but might as well now. One of the reasons I don't drive is because I had recurring nightmares of wrecking. And I always had strange dreams at my grandma's. I was always alone, but I was very young, so I don't know why I was alone all the time. The houses were very close together. I remember almost getting stuck in between the houses. I was a very strange child. I always got into these strange spots, and my dreams always revolved around that area, and I always got lost. And I remember the edges were like a video game. It's like they weren't connected. Like in my memory, I kind of don't remember what roads lead to what roads. It's hard to explain, I guess, but I was young, so. When we were living with this grandma and my step-aunts and uncles, my grandma got into a fight with my grandma before she left, and she had beat her and chopped her hair off. Hair cutting is a big part of this. You'll notice a lot of people chopped off their hair. Rose McGowan. I had the sides of my head shaved at that same time in 2018-ish, so something is going around. Now, am I putting off that much energy that things are coming back into the real world? Is it just media my phone is showing me and making up for each and every one of us? Has somebody taught AI how to lie? Does it tell you what you want to hear and not truth? For whatever reasons, I dreamed a lot of my parents being my parents, but then they would like unzip and they were trolls underneath. Enter the Ouija board about 12 years old when poltergeist activity started occurring, and this is just to 12 years old. And if you didn't watch the previous video about that memory, you should probably watch it. This is something else that I noticed. I've been watching these old vlogs from like 2009, 2012. I wanted to see what changed between analog and digital in our media and why things seem to be leaking out into reality now. And I drifted over. YouTube started suggesting boogeyman type videos, and I don't want to use the name here. You can well read it. I'm not going to spread it around, but they all have these same things in common with anesthesia, alien abductions, sleep paralysis, Bigfoot encounters. They all have very similar symptoms that you see with general local anesthesia. So what are your thoughts? This is some type of prologue. I have a really nifty little camcorder that I just got. I'm super excited to use that so videos might appear a little differently. This is not an arc. This is my real life, but I'd really like to know what is going on here. So please feel free to comment and share. But gaslighters and things like that will be blocked. Try not to let yourself be manipulated by what is on the screens. Pay more attention to what is actually happening in front of you. And that's what I plan to show as well with a camera that works a little better walking around and whatnot. And we'll see what we can see and where this goes, and if I can prove or disprove some of the theories that we've all started to have. Something happens when we are asleep and under anesthesia, and I notice one of these ARGs. I don't even want to mention the channel name. I know what goes along with it. I know the backstory. I know all of that stuff. But if you actually watch it and you pay attention, there's a similar thread in some of them, and you could call them at this point that they started to be targeted by something supernatural. And one of them, at least one of them, was a person of a very specific type of faith. So this has been going on for a while. What exactly is happening, I'm not sure, but I have some suspicions. And again, I don't want to say anything definitive just yet. More soon. Bye, guys.